Conference, Carmel Gates, as General Secretary to present the 2021 annual report. I have to say it is a great privilege for me to be standing here as your General Secretary, and I am very proud to be here. Because I only took over in October, I do want to thank Alison Miller for all the work that she did, not just last year, but in all the many years of service to NIPSA. And I know, she hasn't finished her work, she's still active in the Irish Congress of Trade Union as chairperson, but I know that when Alison eventually does get a chance to retire, that you'll join me in wishing her a very long and happy retirement. Today has been, I suppose, a bit different for all of us. I have to say I'm astounded by the professionalism of the workers here, because there was a few things that weren't expected. We weren't sure how many references back and so on there were going to be. So that's why there was a bit of a delay with voting and so on. But I have to say I am absolutely astounded by the professionalism and how quickly they have jumped into the issues. And I have to say, as someone who has sat on that seat that Denise is sitting in for a number of years, I know how difficult it is in a real setting to be in this position, but to be dealing with all these screens that we see in front of us and all this technology, I have to say it has been quite amazing to watch Denise in action. And I know that we wish Brian absolutely all the best, and we thank him for his work for the year. But I have to say that Denise is doing an absolutely cracker job in that role at the moment. Now, I have to say, for me, taking over as General Secretary, if Carlsberg were making moments to take over as General Secretary of any trade union, this would definitely not be one of them. I mean, not only do we face one of the worst cost of living crises in decades, we have also, on top of that, one of the worst Tory governments imaginable. A government of liars and cheats and people who are looking after the rich as they do, but even more blatantly than normal. On top of that, we have a war in Ukraine, which looks dangerously close to spilling over to other areas. And in the midst of all that, we have here no government and no immediate prospect of one. So if there was a time that you wanted a challenge, then I have to say this is kind of, the top of anybody's list. But before I really will start to get into moving the annual report, the very first thing that I want to do is thank NIPSA staff, not just the ones who are responsible for making all this happen. And I do believe that from here on in, it will start to move very seamlessly. I want to thank those who have worked to make the conference a success, and I have to say there has been a lot of backroom work, but also not just that, for all the work that staff have done, not just over this year but over many years. And it has been a very difficult and unscripted and a very trying time for all of us, and I know that you appreciate, as I do, the fact that NIPSA staff have kept the ship afloat, have kept services running completely uninterrupted, and for them and to them I'm very thankful. At the moment, we're running under power because, as you know, the General Council has commissioned a staffing review. So at the moment, we aren't filling permanent posts, and we have, I have to say, relied on some staff or some members to come in and help us out, and to them I am also very, very grateful. I also want to thank, and I know that people were curious as to why Tanja was calling, calling for the vote to back up Denise's rulings. I just want to thank Denise, just as Denise has stepped in to fill Brian's shoes. I want to thank Tanja Killen, who has stepped in to fill Peter Boyle's shoes. Tanja has stepped in as treasurer, so I suppose that will be news to many out there when you may be curious as to her role. But before I proceed any further, what I also want to do up front is thank you, the activists out there in the branches, because honestly, you have worked tirelessly, not just over the last couple of years, which have been tremendously difficult, but also for all the work that you have done. And I know that over the next few days, we're going to see a lot of faces that I'm very familiar with and very fond of, and those of you who ideally we would love to be seeing in person. But I have to say, I'm looking forward to seeing you even on the screen, and it's been a while since I've seen some faces. But you have been absolutely tremendous, and I, as a said in the note I sent out, I might be biased, but I do believe that NIPSA reps are second to none, and I think that our union is second to none. You have been there to support, to give hope to branches, to give up-to-date information to members through very, very difficult times, and your work is extremely well appreciated, and you're what's keeping NIPSA going. And now I am going to ask you to redouble your efforts, and to really improve the resolve that you have, because I think more than ever we need to improve our ranks and we need to get more new members in, and I know that that's something that you're committed to. You have done not just a job for your union, which has been appreciated, but you have kept services running through one of the most difficult periods of time that any of us have lived through. You've kept services running, you've kept frontline services going, and you know, it is sad to say that your reward, for some, a few hand claps on doorsteps by a government that doesn't really appreciate you, because your reward for all the work that you've been doing has been a cost of living crisis, one of the worst in decades. We now have a situation where prices are rising 23 times faster than wages, 38 times faster than benefits. And even those in government and the Office of Budget Responsibility and others are now saying they fear for the poverty that children are now growing up in. We now have households and our members who are earning well below the average wage. And we now are in a situation where people aren't just talking about, you know, can I afford a holiday this year? Can I afford to take my kids out for a meal? But actually, can I afford to turn the heating on? Can I afford to buy the weekly shop? And I know that that is not the reward that we as public servants deserve for all the years of work that we have put in. As I say, not just in the last couple of years through the pandemic, but even before that. Your rewards have also been an attack on jobs and an attack on pensions. And those are issues that we will go on to deal with later in the conference. Your awards have also been reduced numbers, where you're all operating under a process where there's not enough staff to do the job that's required. There's an over-reliance on agency work, and at the same time, our living standard, your terms and conditions have been driven downwards, and that is not what we expect for the work and the role that you do. Your pay cuts is exactly what they are. They're not pay awards, and none of you have achieved anything that comes close to recompense for the work that you do. I know also that many of you have been very worried, not just for in terms of how you cope with the cost of living, but many of you have spent the last number of years worrying about your families, those close to you, through a pandemic, particularly those of you who have vulnerable family members, and I know as well that many of you have lost loved ones, and those are things that we will live with for a very long time. And yet, despite that, you have carried on. You've carried on with homeschooling. You've carried on being more efficient in a home working environment than could be imagined. And I think that it is unacceptable that the government has not rewarded you for that. There is now palpable anger in society towards a government that is partying in Downing Street, while most of you were just about keeping your head above water and just about able to see your family and your loved ones. So I think that anger is not going to dissipate. It's not going to go away. And I think it is absolutely going to spill over in the next number of while. And I think, like all of you, I want to see this government get a bloody nose. I think we want to see the end of Boris and his cronies, and we want to see the end of them for good. And we all know that had Corbyn been elected rather than Johnson in the last election, we know that many of the lives that were lost, thousands of the lives that were lost in the pandemic would not have been lost. Corbyn would not have allowed working class families to suffer in the way that this Tory government has done, and he would not have been organising piss-ups in Downing Street, that's for sure. So I think that anger is going to continue. But over the while, I want to congratulate many of the members within NIPSA who have stood firm and have taken action. We started the year with action by Newry Morn District Council, who were striking against unfair terms and conditions and an unfair employer. And that strike action, I'm glad to say, in conjunction with other unions, was tremendously successful, and the employer was forced to agree to the terms that the workers insisted on. Now, unfortunately, they then went on to renege on the agreement that they had made, and as a result, the unions held another ballot, another successful strike ballot, but thankfully, before they even had to hit the streets or hit the picket lines, the employer capitulated. And that was, I mean, to my mind, a very, very forceful strength of the workers in that area, and is a beacon to us all. There were other beacons during the last year, and I have to say I was very proud to be standing on the picket line with a group of workers in Queens who took action there against what is, one of the worst employers we have here, to be honest, Queen's University Belfast. So a group of women creche workers who were being taken advantage of by Queen's as a result of the pandemic stood firm and said, we aren't putting up with it. So they were on the picket line over a number of weeks. The resolve strengthened as each week went past. Rather than weakening, they got more and more determined they would win, and they did so. During that time, they also linked up with Hovis workers, and they marched their picket line. Hovis marched back to the Queen's picket line, and I have to say it was great delight that both those disputes ended in success at the same time. Another group of workers who have given us a beacon is the education welfare officers, who have taken strike action now for more than 20 days. That started at the end of last year, continued into this year, and I have to say they have my full support. At the moment, their action is in abeyance because the Assembly is not sitting, and there needs to be some decisions in that, but they already have won some concessions from the employer, and I know, like you, with me, you'll join in wishing them every success in their action when it resumes. They're continuing their action short of strike action, but it's just their strike action has been temporarily suspended. I also want to shout out to those in the Assembly who have had a successful ballot for strike action. Their strike action, I have to say that the plan that they had to take strike action on the 12th of May was thwarted by, it was due to be the first plenary session of the Assembly and would have been a magnificent day for the workers to be on strike. Unfortunately, at the last minute, the Speaker changed the plenary day to avoid our strike day, and as a result, that action didn't happen because it would have been too late to move the strike day. But I commend the work that the action by the Assembly workers, and again, we wish them every success. There have been other action that hasn't been strike action, but has been very, very successful action by the members. And I want to shout out to those in the health service who fought very, very very determinedly and with great strength against the introduction of car parking charges. Now, that wasn't just car parking charges. Well, initially it was the fight was against car parking charges for staff, which would have been another pay cut without a question of a doubt. If health service workers were going to have to be charged to park to go to work. And already, as we know, I mean, they're not paid enough, so that additional charge would have been unbearable. So they fought, they stood up, they fought, they took on the Assembly, and they forced the Assembly to back down. And I want to congratulate the workers and our members who were involved in that. They also won the issue for all. So nobody now will be charged for parking at those health service venues, and I think that it's only fair. I want to as well shout out to in the NICS, where we have now had a new change to the mileage policy, and now members will be paid for, instead of their net commute miles, they will be paid the lesser of, which means they will be recompensed for more miles than they previously would. Now, that's been a long running registered disagreement, and I am very proud that it has now come to an end, and from the 1st of June the new mileage policy will come into being. Now, what we need to do as a matter of priority for all of us is to ensure that we increase the amount people are paid for miles, because at the moment, because of fuel crisis and other things, that it is not, people are not making ends meet. As well as the industrial action, we've been involved in a number of legal action cases. I'll not go into all the details, but you'll be aware of the very successful case taken some time ago, the IGNU case, which has led to the issue in relation to holiday pay. While some areas have had a settlement, in others that's still under negotiation, and those things are still working their way through the legal process, which, as you can imagine, takes some time. But I know, and I ask you to be patient, because it is much better that we do it and we get it right, and you wait for it, than it's resolved before we get the best deal for you. The other issue that I want to mention is the injury to feelings cases. And this is something that we have just begun the communication on. There'll be a session later on where John McShane will explain to you why and the importance of that. That's because the case is based on the fact that the change was made to pensions in 2015. Everybody was forced into a new pension scheme. Then the government were forced to do a remedy which ended on the 1st of April this year, and it's from that point on that we have a case on age discrimination. The details of that, and I know I'm probably not giving very much detail now, but the details of that will become clearer to you as the conference goes on and over the next number of weeks. But what it does show, and NIPSA's success on the industrial front and on the legal front, shows how much and how hard we are working for you. One case that you'll be familiar with has been all over the media recently is the Broncos case, where a vet who was very poorly treated for speaking out and doing her job properly as a proper public servant. That started as an NIPSA case and then progressed through MTB into a case that they pursued. And as you'll know, it led to one of the biggest settlements that we've had here. That proves the importance of being an NIPSA member. That proves the importance of being part of a union. And I would ask you to use these and other opportunities to go out now and recruit more members. And because working class people deserve a fight back, and this union is there and is prepared to stand up and give them that fight back. I just want to make a very brief comment over, obviously by having conferences of this nature, we have saved some money over the last while. So NIPSA's finances are in a better state than they've been for a while. We were able to use some of that money to do some long overdue repairs to Harkin House. Now, those of you who've been going to Harkin House for as long as I have will know that it hasn't changed very much in the last 40 years. In fact, I don't even think there's been hardly a lick of paint put on it in that time. We had a leaky roof. We've had all sorts of difficulties. We used the opportunity of the lockdown and the money we saved from conferences to put it into the building and into the fabric of the building, new roof and new changes, which I believe you will find very pleasing. Those of you, the very small number of you who have managed to be in Harkin House over the last wee while, will recognise the changes, and those of you who've seen them have been very pleased. But we've been able now to get rid of the buckets that caught the water that was coming through the leaking roof, and now we have a building that is much healthier for staff, but also for members. And I want to thank in particular those who put the hard work in. I want to thank Alec. I want to thank Donna, who unfortunately has COVID at the minute, and Stephen and Padraig for the work they did on the building. And I think when you see it, you will be as proud as I am of that. I want to just really quickly, I don't know how long I've been speaking today, it's probably maybe too long. Okay, so I want to just really mention what I feel is important for us going forward, because NIPSA has been doing sterling work on its own, but it's not just as a union working on its own that we can make a difference. And I think it is important that we work together with other trade unions, as we have done. And part of that, I think, will be recognised in our guest speakers. We have with this later in the conference, Mark Sawatka, who's the General Secretary of PCS. They've just had an announcement of potentially 91,000 job losses. So, and if it's visited there, it can often be visited over here. So I think that that's something we want to work with them on. I want to also, Anne Speed from Unison will be speaking later in the conference. Anne Speed, who we've been working with in health and education. And I have to say, I'm very proud to support Unison in their campaign for free school meals for all children. And I think that that's something that we can work together as a union. Darren Proctor will be speaking to you a bit later on too. Darren Proctor is the Regional Secretary for the RMT. And I think that after what we witnessed with P&O Ferries, I think you'll appreciate the importance of solidarity there. And we've been very proud to stand with Darren in Larne and his colleagues in fighting. Now, all of our members are doing sterling work, and the work that we do provides the very basics of a decent society. If we want a decent society, we need a good education service. We need a good health service, and we need good housing. And I'm proud to say that our colleagues in health, in education and in housing have been standing up for those things. And we don't pay lip service to these things because we recognise the working class people deserve to have a house to live on, and our colleagues in the Housing Executive are fighting hard to keep that executive in place, because that's what will provide fair housing for all working class families. Similarly, as I said, in health and education, but also we have common cause with other unions on pay, on pensions, and in the proper provision of staffing for all of our services. We are also, as well as on the local front, we are working with and giving support internationally. We do it through our Global Solidarity campaign, and we also we have also recently sent our support to workers and trade unionists in Ukraine who are fighting against the Russian invasion, but also fighting their own government, because Zelensky is no friend of working class people. We also have been sending support to workers in Yemen, in Colombia and in Palestine for the oppression that they face. We do have many challenges ahead, colleagues, and I know Denise is wanting me to finish. We do have many challenges ahead, and I do want to say to you that those challenges are many, and they're too many for me to go into now, but there are a few that I think that we just need to mention and keep in our minds through conference. And those are, we are still fighting for decent workers' rights. This Assembly hasn't taken away all the anti-Tory legislation, and therefore it is still a challenge for us just to do the basic trade unionists. We still want all our social rights. We want equality for all. We want women's rights to choose. We want an end to racism, an end to homophobia and transphobia. We want an end to sexism and misogyny. And I know that those are issues that we're battling in the workplace every day. But on top of all that, as we go forward, we need to be careful that our movement stays united, because on top of all the other things that are faced by workers across the world, we also have the evil of sectarianism. And at the moment, when we don't have an assembly in place, when those parties are at war with each other, then the worry is that our community is at war with each other. And as a trade union, we have a very proud history of fighting against sectarianism, of being anti-sectarian, of doing what we can to foster workers' unity. And I think that that is going to be a significant challenge for us as we go forward. And I just want to finish on this, because as a socialist, as a revolutionary socialist, I have worked all my life to ensure that we build a better society and we build a better economy. I will continue with my aims and the aims that is in the NIPSA objects of working towards a socialist economy. Comrades, as never before, it is time for unity. It is time for us to work together. So I ask you, keep up your resolve, enjoy conference, and up the workers.